Hello, my name is Keri Langendorf, and I'm going to talk about my thesis, starting with why I chose my topic. So, the topic I chose was I wanted to look at the impact that technology has on students. At first, I was kind of looking at kindergarten through eighth grade, but I had to focus on mostly middle school because I switched jobs this summer. So, um, when I had first picked my topic, I at the time was teaching third grade and now I teach middle school. So I wanted to focus on middle schoolers and how it impacted their academic achievement as well as their engagement. So the idea kind of stemmed from my third graders having a lot of distractions with technology and was it really benefiting them academically? Another reason I chose this topic was just because in the United States, we are living in a time where technology is kind of taking over in a sense, whether that's a good or a bad thing. A lot of kids do spend a lot of times on screens. There are many great educational programs that schools use. And so I wanted to look at the impacts it has on today's children in the classroom. I've been a part of a lot of different conversations about how to use technology in a positive way, but also, the downsides of it about kids getting distracted, kids using AI potentially to do assignments and not actually learning the content. So I thought that overall this topic would help me as an educator use technology in my own career as a positive tool and make it beneficial versus a distraction or something that's not worth the time and the energy we put into it. So overall, my methods, I wanted to do a mixed methods design to get both the quantitative and qualitative data, and then see were there any connections on the quantitative data with different testing scores or different benchmarks to see student growth, and if that was impacted by students' engagement or their opinions on the technology as a whole. So my research took place in a private school setting, a Lutheran private school in Collinsville, Illinois. And again, I did questionnaires with 7th and 8th graders. So I got a little bit of a mix of age ranges. So yeah, I had 23 students that participated, and I also sent questionnaires to teachers to get their input on technology in the classroom and to get that teacher perspective versus just a student perspective. So I had 7 teachers in my building, which I believe a majority of the 7, at least 4 of them work with middle school students directly, and a lot of the other ones were like 3rd grade and up. So what was interesting is that all students reported daily technology use for at least a full year. Now, that might be a little different because I know I had a couple students come from other districts prior to this, and then a couple of our students came from being homeschooled type thing. So my guess is that they use technology, but again, we don't have that information. So for the quantitative data, I analyzed existing academic data in math and reading, and I use STAR reading, which is our accelerated reader program. The students take a diagnostic at the beginning of the year, and it tells them where they are as far as grade level goes. So I used that assessment and I looked at last year's to this year's score. So at least 1 year period of improvement. We also use Easy CBM at my school, and that does take into account reading and math abilities. So I looked again at, 3 different points. So I looked at winter last year, spring, and then fall this year when we took it. So I had 3 different points there just to see achievement levels and growth over time, to then see, okay, if they've been using technology at least for a year consistently, like what's kind of the outcome there. And then lastly, I also looked at MobyMax math data because I didn't want just one assessment tool used for my quantitative data, just to make sure that everything kind of followed the same pattern, or maybe it didn't. So then for my qualitative data, those were the questionnaires that I gave to the 7th and 8th grade students, as well as the 7 teachers who chose to participate. These questions had to do with how often and why teachers use technology, not just necessarily what it's used for, but why are you using it? Because, again, we want to see if they're using it in a positive way, not just as a time filler. These also looked at perceived impact on reading and math, so how students or how teachers looked at and said, Are these programs truly helping our students in these domains? Engagement and motivation, and challenges such as distractions, technical issues, and equity. The analysis for the quantitative data, I used descriptive comparisons of different growth patterns over time and showed over time how the significance or what the significance was of their growth. So then I took the questionnaires and I looked at them for recurring patterns about technology use, engagement, and instructional effectiveness. So overall, I rooted this study in the constructivist learning theory, which basically emphasizes that students do learn best when they can actively explore, get feedback, and interact with meaningful tools. Those tools, in this case, being technology, making it a fitting, basis for studying technology use in the classroom. So here are some of the results I found. My key finding number 1 was that, which this didn't surprise me, that technology had a stronger impact on math than it did in reading. So if you would have asked me a year ago what my thoughts were on the outcomes, I definitely would have said that I think there are more ways to incorporate technology in math than in reading, just with different programs and fact fluency and different tools online to use. So overall, math scores showed consistent growth across assessment periods. Tools like MobyMax, Big Ideas Math, and Desmos were just commonly cited pieces of technology that students and teachers mentioned that help students visualize concepts and then also get immediate feedback. So as far as Big Ideas, the curriculum reuse, teachers can go in and actually give students feedback on their assignment and make comments. And this supported problem solving and mastery. Teachers consistently said digital math tools made abstract content more concrete. So MobyMax or the graphing tool, students are able to check their work with those. They can do example problems and then do their homework problems based off of the example and that kind of thing. So the key finding number 2 was that reading results were mixed. This one's a little trickier because, again, reading as far as technology goes is great because I personally think it's good with accommodations. But I think improving reading overall, and we're going to get into this later, that a lot of teachers said you need a mix of technology and paper, pencil, actual hard books, that kind of thing. So about half of the students improved in reading over the time that I looked at the assessments, while others plateaued or even some declined. Teachers believe digital reading tools helped some students, so students who needed those read aloud supports or visual supports, but also noted increased distraction, reading off a screen, reduced stamina, and students even preferring screens over print. So those were kind of the highlights with reading. Key finding number 3 was that technology significantly increased engagement and motivation. So if you've ever talked to a teacher, the way they incorporate technology is not just for fun or just to fill time, but especially in my classroom, I use it because the kids enjoy it. They're more engaged. They want to be on their devices, that kind of thing. So both teachers and students agreed that gamified platforms boosted excitement, participation, and focus. So any of those sites like Gimkit, Blookit, Kahoot, 99 Math, any of those were great because not only were students getting that repetitive practice, but the kids enjoyed it and they were engaged. Students felt technology made learning fun, faster, and easier to understand. So again, finding that boosted engagement, which I think also goes hand in hand with, I feel like educators use more math-related gamified platforms than reading. So again, those math scores that were better, that makes a lot of sense, that kind of ties in directly with that. And then immediate digital feedback helps students self-correct and track their progress. So with the immediate feedback, especially with online assignments or even I use Google Classroom a lot, and so students can directly ask me questions and I can reply, in real time on my phone, that kind of thing, and then students can track their progress that way, which is a great tool if used appropriately. So key finding number 4, which won't shock anybody, challenges are still out there. Teachers and students identified similar issues, which can be frustrating, and these are the kind of things I would like to further a study on if I had the time. So obviously distraction, off-task behavior. A lot of schools do use GoGuardian, but again, you have to use it effectively to get it to work the way it needs to. Technical problems, students get really frustrated when their computers lag or freeze, or they're doing something and their work doesn't save, that kind of thing. And then academic integrity concerns, the use of AI, Googling answers instead of doing the work themselves, especially with math. So this kind of just reinstated the need for teacher training and balance between digital and traditional methods. So a lot of my research and study kind of pointed to technology is great, and if you implement it well and use it appropriately, it can be a great tool, but just to make sure that we're not replacing traditional methods with technology. So the overall conclusion was that technology does support learning, and it helps students be more engaged, but it has to be used effectively. And to do that, we have to purposefully integrate it. It needs to be supported by strong teacher guidance. We can't just put it all on the device and say, okay, go learn. And then it needs to be balanced with non-digital traditional instruction. So a mix of maybe the technology can be your supplemental, and then your traditional paper, pencil lessons can be your non-digital platforms. So overall, we saw math benefits the most from adaptive digital tools, while reading requires more careful balancing between screen-based and print activities. So I learned a lot from this study, and I think that a lot of teachers would agree with the outcomes of this, and we can learn a lot. And so further studies, I would obviously want to maybe take this and look at, especially these students that said they've been using technology over the course of more than a year, like 2, 3, 4 years, looking at their assessment scores over more time and seeing if those math patterns continued, if the reading patterns continued. I would also want to have a bigger population size. So being in a private school, I was very limited. Out of my 60 students, roughly 23 participated. So I think if you had a junior high or a school that was much bigger, as far as the enrollment, then you could have a bigger picture and get even more ideas that you could work with and see, are these conclusions still true based on other areas. So yeah, I've learned a lot, and I hope you guys also learned a lot. And I'm just excited to be done with this journey.